there are three bands that I think about when I think of kind of the apex of Christian music in the mid to late 90s. DC Talk, Newsboys, Audio Adrenaline.
Yeah.
And if you go to the K-Love 90s app,
Yeah.
you're going to hear one of those three bands, I think, every other song.
Yeah, pretty much.
And I've been a worship pastor for, really since around 2000.
Yeah.
And every young worship leader that's come up under me that I've worked with, their favorite song ever is Big House.
Well, I don't know.
And they all know. No, I'm serious. I'm just telling you the facts here.
Maybe when they were in elementary school.
Well, but still, it stays with them, And all you got to do is get into the song, and they know every word of the song.
Yeah.
And I would say too, Mark, that one of my favorite CCM songs of all time is Ocean Floor.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those beautiful songs I've ever heard, and I still go back to it time after time and listen to it. And you and I didn't run in the same circles just because of the type of music you did, the type of music I did before
we
him.
did a couple festivals together.
Well, festivals was always kind of like the class reunion
like,
type where everybody knows everybody somehow. But I'm just glad that, hey, 30, 40 years down the road, we're still sitting here able to have a conversation.
Alive.
We're still alive. We've still got some hair left on our head and some life in our body. So welcome to the 1 Degree of Andy podcast,
Man,
Mark Stuart. I'm really glad you're here.
It's a privilege and honor to be here. It's cool to see all the musical heroes of mine that are coming to visit you. And I'm like, man, I got to be a part of it. So it's cool.
I appreciate it. Well, you said yes awful quick. And that's a blessing to me because, again, a lot of people don't like to talk about their past. And I've had a lot of people say no, going like some pretty big names. Just say, I don't want to relive that part. I don't really, maybe I haven't come to terms with it yet. I don't want to, there's a different story I want to tell. I'm like, come on and tell us whatever story you want.
Right.
Because people still love you no matter what happened. And those songs are like passengers for us.
Yeah.
And they're attached to a personality.
Yeah.
And when those songs come back around, it takes you to a different place in time, and you get the different feels and all that kind of stuff. And I would say again, Audio A still is such a cornerstone group in the '90s. And do you still feel that? I mean, do you still feel like there are a lot of people out there that comment on your music and reach out to you about that era?
Yeah, there's a lot of people that hold Audio A and DC Talk and Third Day, Newsboys, Jars of Clay. All those bands, I think, were so formative to a big generation of, I guess that would be young Gen X and probably millennials, I guess, that are still in ministry, and a lot of them are, still in really appreciate that music and what it did for their kind of formation of their faith. And I get that quite a bit because I'm a speaker and I get to travel with different artists. And I can't sing anymore because I lost my voice.
Okay, I want to talk about that because, that's a big part of your story and something I'm fascinated about.
Yeah, it was a bit of a journey. But the cool thing is that God's allowed me to be still a part of really the Christian music industry, ministry, and as a speaker, and I get to really reconnect with 35, 45, 50-year-olds, even 60s and 70-year-olds that Audio A was a big part of their life. So even this weekend, I was out with We the Kingdom, with Ed Cash and all those guys, which was awesome because I've worked with Ed forever. But a lot of those fans, that grew up listening to Audio A were there. So I got to hear their stories and what the songs meant to them. And I get to hear that a lot. Yeah. And I think a lot of artists their careers might be over, they don't get that blessing of being richly connected to the people that they've affected.
Yeah.
But for me, it's quite the opposite. I get to experience that all the time, which is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it really is neat.
Can I ask how you lost your voice?
Yeah, sure.
Because I got to tell you again, as a professional vocalist, how I made my and that's always the biggest fear, isn't it?
Yeah.
That the thing that you make your living with is gone.
Yeah.
And you can't do it anymore.
Yeah, and it's so fragile too. Your vocal cords are just these little bitty things that you're depending on, and when you're in the thick of making music and records and singing concerts and you're singing your heart out, you really don't think about.
You feel invincible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially, yeah. And then you get older, you start to realize it is an instrument that if you abuse it or break it or drop, it's like it goes away, But for me, now I didn't know it at the time, but I had developed a voice disorder called spasmodic dysphonia.
Yeah, okay. I've heard about this, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a few people that, like Kennedy, who's running for president.
Yeah, RFK.
Yeah.
Junior.
So he has it. He has a little worse than me, but he has the same thing that I have. There's different rappers through the years or pastors or rock singers who I think, now I'm not a doctor or an ENT.
Yeah, but I know you've done your research.
Yeah, I've lived it too.
Yeah,
so
right.
I think certain people are susceptible to this dysphonia, and if they overuse their voice, it accelerates what eventually would come to their voice when they might be 85, 90 years old. So basically my voice, even though I'm not 90 years old, sometimes I feel like it, my voice is.
Yeah.
It kind of isn't, it's just a fatigued, worn out voice. And
when did you first notice it starting to do that?
Oh, pretty early.
Really?
Yeah. I would lose my voice a lot early on in audio, even like 96, 97. And I remember the first time I lost my voice, it was, you probably remember doing this gig, but it was GMA at the big like radio showcase or something. It was
it in the Renaissance
Hotel in the big ballroom? Yep. And you're like playing your new record.
Oh yeah.
And we had just been in the studio, and I sang. I think I was singing "Free Ride," which was an Edgar Winter cover, which was like way up here. No, it was. I was doing another song. No, it was Edgar Winter, and I just remember my voice clicked, and it just stopped working completely.
Oh wow.
Like it wasn't like, okay, it's hoarse. It was, I would move my mouth and nothing would come out. Like it froze. And I'm like, this is weird. Someone else had to finish the songs. And I'm like, hopefully you like it. But that's all we got. And then what happened was I started getting, I would get prednisone shots, steroid shots, to help take the swelling down in my vocal cords.
Right. And that was the thing. People don't know. If you don't know the life on the road as a vocalist, that was the thing. If you started feeling anything in your voice, you'd go and get a steroid shot. That was the thing. Yeah. And long term, it's not good. It's not a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I the first time I got a steroid shot, it released all this like range for me. So I would go back in the studio and I would get a steroid shot, and then I could sing like never before. Like it wasn't
the double-edged sword. I know it's coming. Yeah.
Yeah. And it wasn't like hit notes like Steve Perry or like Steven Tyler, like rock, like kind of incendiary, screaming vocals. I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. And it's not like you get addicted to steroids or anything, but you do get where you lean on that as a tool. And my doctor were like, you can't take this but like twice a year. So you got to like time it perfect. And then it was like once a year. And then eventually it become unmanageable where my voice started to like get so shaky and broken that the steroids wouldn't even affect it, But that all kind of happened. It started. Oh, here's the other thing that happened, Andy. It was I wasn't really a great vocalist, Like I was a rock singer. Like you don't consider like Mick Jagger a great singer, or I could sing.
I would digress, but go ahead.
I mean, there were moments where I could sing pretty good, but then once my voice got really hoarse and really rough and raspy, but it was uncontrollable.
Yeah.
Okay. But then I would get a steroid shot, and then I could have rasp and control. And then that's when the magic happened for me.
Yeah.
So that's when I was like, oh my gosh, now I'm like, I could do this and be in the conversations with other singers. Like, okay, this guy's a legit vocalist.
Right.
But then the control started to wane and the rasp took over And then it just developed into something completely different. It wasn't really raspiness or hoarse.
Yeah.
My voice, this might be really boring for everybody.
No.
Dude,
it's not for me, and this is my podcast.
Okay,
so
there we go.
You keep going.
What happened was I started to not even, the ranges, chunks of the range disappeared.
Yeah.
Then
Dead spots.
in it. I'd have to figure out how to sing around stuff. And when you do that, the melodies get less interesting. You know, you start to become a little pedestrian, and like you're like, this isn't really great anymore. Yeah. Then it just got worse and worse, and then really couldn't even sing at all. And right at the end of kind of our run, near the end of it, people were tuning vocals and you know, like fixing vocals.
Right.
But when we were making records, you couldn't fix anything.
You did it till it was right.
Yeah, you just.
And there was no fixing it live.
Yeah, that was it.
You can run stuff live now.
Yeah,
and sound
you can
amazing,
tune vocals live now, but back then,
yeah,
it is what it is.
Yeah.
So I felt hopeless and defeated, and it started to become like a burden for me.
I remember hearing it on Ocean Floor.
Oh yeah.
But there's something that lends to the intensity and the beauty of that song.
Yeah.
But as a professional vocalist, I can hear and already knew kind of a little bit.
Like, this isn't right.
Yeah, something's happening here.
Yeah, you could hear it in the verses, and then that's where Tyler Burkham, who was our guitar player at the time, now he's with Need to Breathe. He's got a killer voice, and he actually wrote the chorus of that song, not me. Like, he's amazing songwriter. You know, I got to write the verses with Bob, and we got to pull that song together. But what made that song really cool is what you're alluding to, is the lyrics. That's where we could still make it work. Let me just say that. We're in the studio. I'm like, okay, if Tyler could sing the soaring, beautiful, released vocal part where everything starts to become transcendent, and get to sing the broken pieces, then we could still make this work. We kind of figured out how to make it work. Yeah. But it was really relying on Tyler. So in the studio, I was trying to sing at first the whole song, and the chorus wasn't delivering. Like, it just didn't happen. And literally, Will is in there, and we were producing our own records at that point, but Will's in there, like, all right, try it again. And I'm just like, this isn't going to work ever. Like, it's done.
What did that do to you emotionally?
I'm crying.
I bet.
Like, it broke me down because, I didn't really, maybe I did feel kind of sorry for myself, but I was just like, this doesn't have anywhere to go. Like, it's over. Yeah. Like, I can't do what I felt like I was born to do.
I almost called you honey. Sorry.
It's okay.
I'll edit that out. I totally get that. Yeah. And it's one of the reasons I've always wanted to have you on. Yeah. Is because I've always felt for you. I've always gone, what if that was me? How would I react? What would my future be? Yeah. If all of a sudden what I depended on for my existence, to feed my family, to have my purpose. Yeah. That's the only thing I've done basically my whole life. What do you do if it's gone? And I've always wanted to talk to you about this. Yeah. And I know there's much more to your story, but I have to start here because to me it's the
apex of it, or every story has a kind of a dark night of the soul. Yeah. And that was definitely a part of my dark moments, But it was heartbreaking and frustrating. And, at the same time, I'm also going through, like, deep, like, emotional issues in my marriage. Oh, wow. So I felt like everything that I, used to have control over, my voice, just not that I had control over my marriage, but it was there for me.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
It was just gone. I couldn't fix any of it. Couldn't fix my voice. I couldn't fix my marriage. Couldn't fix the band anymore. Because eventually, Tyler would have to sing more and more, and it kind of, it just kind of, he wasn't comfortable with it, and it just felt like.
Were you the leader of the band? I mean, was it pretty much?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, there was a lot of big, great personalities, and we were blessed to have a lot of creatives and a lot of servants and a lot of everything. Just God just orchestrated like a window of time for all those personalities to come together. But yeah, because there was a moment where like, hey, you guys could just keep going and get a new lead singer, and they're all like, what's the point?
Yeah,
I think everybody was just kind of done.
Yeah,
because it became so difficult for me. I'm trying to hold it together. Walking on stage became the last thing I wanted to do, like on earth, was to walk on stage. Because no one knew what was happening in my marriage, and I couldn't perform. I couldn't sing. Yeah. And I felt like just filled with shame, just like this is like these people, pay to be here, and I'm just got nothing. I don't, not only.
Yeah, and there's no real outlet back then to tell your story or to have an ongoing conversation about what you're going through that can connect with people. It's your music's out there. You do a radio interview, you do a print interview, and that was it. And so, because if something comes out about something that's wrong with your life or that's not going right, it's seen as oh wow, that's
over.
It's over, right?
Yeah.
There's no ongoing conversation, especially because we're out on the road all the time.
Yeah.
There's most of us. There's not a lot of good church, interaction. You lived in Nashville, so it's probably a little easier for you, but to be home and be with the community. But for those of us that lived outside and had to do extra travel, and I wouldn't get home sometimes until Sunday night. Yeah. And back out on the road on Thursday, not a lot of church going on. But again, places to work this out where you're not under the spotlight and having to perform night in and night out.
Yeah, I didn't know where to go.
Yeah.
I didn't. There was nowhere to go for me. There probably would have been if I, I'm sure people would have been there for me, but I felt like I was alone. Like for a good 5 or 6 years, kind of in this, everybody's dependent on me. I'm the lead singer of the band. Yeah. My voice is going away. My life's falling apart. It's over. Like there's so many, like like the ship is going down. And I'm just trying to hold it together because there was like, 15, 16 people, that are kind of depending on this happening or this working or whatever. But there also were some moments to, God did show up on stage though, pretty much every night where you're just like, man, I don't want to be here. And then he's like, it's okay because I'm here. Yeah. You don't really have to be here because I got this.
He's undefeated.
Yeah. Yeah. And he would still do great things. And, people were motivated, encouraged and blessed. And even in the brokenness, I could see that. But what I guess what I'm getting to is by the end of it all, I wasn't really sad to see it wrap up.
Oh, wow.
Because I was like not really having a good time. Yeah. Yeah. Because I kind of like, it was a long, slow death. And at the end of it, you're like, just put me out of my misery, that kind of thing.
Wow. Well, I know we're going to end on a cliffhanger here, but I want to come back to that. Yeah. Well, let's go back to the beginning. Sure. Let's go back to the beginning of your entry into a life of music. Everybody has an origin story. Like, who found you? What were your first opportunities to get on stage and sing and think, maybe I could do this for a living?
Yeah. Well, my dad's a minister, preacher, pastor, and he also sang gospel music, quartet music. So I kind of grew up just going to concerts, listening to music. My dad plays piano, got a great voice, super talented, plays every instrument. Then my brother started playing music, and then I'm like, I guess I should do this too. But I'm like, I'm going to do it different. I played drums. So I was a drummer, had a drum set in the garage and all that. Started getting in bands. And just realized that.
Like in high school?
Yeah, in high school, maybe late junior high. Uh-huh. Yeah, and then it was like, listening to different, my parents really didn't just play me Christian music. I don't even think they knew anything existed except for like the Stamps and the Imperials anyway.
Yeah.
So they didn't know what was happening in the Christian music scene. But they didn't really keep other records from me, like we were listening to Queen and stuff like that, which just blows my mind. But, or like, whatever, like rock music. But I started to really love it from a rock band standpoint, but never really thought about this is something you could do for a living.
Yeah.
Vocally, I fell in love with Russ Taff.
Oh yeah, how could you not?
Yeah, I was just like this. This to me is the most powerful. Like to me, it was like magical. His voice was like supernatural.
Yeah.
And then I started to kind of sing at church a little bit with my brother, and then we would rehearse, and I would go for notes and like things. I'm like, dang it! In my head, it sounded pretty good. I'm like, I think I could do this.
Got a little power there.
Yeah, like a little power.
And that's rare.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great singers out there, but there are a few singers that have precision, power, and then that emotive ability, which I'm sure you're going to get to, which is you can not just hit it with power, but you can make people feel something.
Yeah, you can story tell and move around a note. Yeah, and I realized that I could do that, and I'm like, man, it make people either get excited or feel sad, or which was there's a lot of power in that.
Yeah.
But I was still stuck on the drums, so I'm looking for a singer. Eventually go to college, Kentucky Christian University. And
what were you studying there when you went?
I was going there to be just 1 year. Yeah. I was going to go there 1 year and go to the Air Force Academy.
So everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, I was going to be a pilot.
Really? Hey, I was going to do the same thing.
Really?
Yeah, my dad was in the Air Force. He was a career Air Force man. Like,
no kidding?
Yeah, like 35 years. And I always thought, I kind of had the same thing. Like, I sang in church.
Yeah.
I kind of have a musical family, not on your level, but, people would tell me all the time, oh, you're going to be a professional at this. You should go after it. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I grew up in Waco, Texas. I don't know what to do with this. I don't know where to go. And I was really good at math and engineering and thought,
that's what I was
I'll just go get my aeronautics degree. And then my dad can get me in at the Air Force Academy because he was a colonel in the Air Force, and I'll go fly planes. That sounded like something really cool for me to do.
That's what I was doing. That's wild. What year?
Oh, wow. So I graduated high school in 84.
Wow.
And went to Oklahoma State.
Okay.
From 84 to 87, and quickly found out that I didn't have the chops in like physics and chemistry, and my brain didn't work that like I thought it would.
Yeah.
And I just kept getting invited into bands. Like I kept getting opportunities. Yeah, I got opportunities to keep singing.
Okay.
Until it was like, all right, I get it. I'm going to go that way. Yeah.
All right. Well, so
that's wild.
That was my story too. So I graduated in 86.
Okay.
We might have, if we kind of went the other direction, been at the academy together.
That would have been crazy.
So I was pretty good at physics and math too. So I loved.
Well, physics was my downfall. It was the applied math. Yeah. Or the applied science that math and science together I couldn't get.
Okay.
But math, I was going to be a math major by the time I left.
Okay. Yeah, I had an appointment ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to do 1 year Bible college just to kind of like get more foundationally set before I went to the academy. Mm-hmm. And then started a band, and it kind of changed the trajectory, I guess.
What was the name of that band?
It was, our first band's called A180. We made 2 albums, like independent albums. It was like a 180-degree turnaround.
Yeah.
And it was like more rock, like kind of like.
Do you write your own songs?
Oh yeah, yeah. Wrote our own music. It was like, depending on who was kind of influencing that particular song, because we hadn't really found ourselves yet, but it might have lent more towards like Bon Jovi. This might have been more U2. This might have been more like The Alarm or something like that. So we were kind of across a lot of spectrum. But the same thing, I was like, am I supposed to go to the Air Force Academy, or am I supposed to do music? And then I ended up going to Haiti because I was having like a faith crisis too. I was like, why do I believe all this, like, because I felt like my faith was kind of given to me. And I was kind of running through all these logical thoughts of why I believe what I believe. Ended up going to Haiti to be with my parents because they left right after I graduated high school to be missionaries. So I'm in college, kind of trying to think through all this with my brother. Yeah. Ended up going to Haiti, and there in Haiti, God doesn't want you. I was like, I could hear God speaking to me. He was like, I want you to be in music. And then I came back, and we continued making records as A180, and then ran into a little band called DC Talk at college, and I think Toby came to hear us lead worship. We were leading worship, but it was like crazy, like intense, and he was like, "You guys should get a record deal." He took us to Forefront, but they didn't dig it, and then we made a side project. This is way in the weeds. Side project.
No, I love it. That's the kind of stuff I love.
We made a side project. So they didn't like what we were making, this rock music. Yeah. But we made a side project with Bob Hurtman. His aunt died. And he was like, "Hey guys, good news, my aunt died." And we're like, "What? That's I got $1,500 in the mail for this estate or something." Yeah. And he goes, I want you to make a record, like make a song, like do a track. And he goes, "I want it to be like rap and heavy metal put together." And we're like, "Okay." So we loved going in the studio and creating. So we created this song called My God. And it just blew up on the Christian metal charts. Wow. And it was so bizarre. And it was this, mix of rap and metal. Mm-hmm. And that's the song that Forefront was like, we like that.
Oh, we get it now.
Yeah, well, not only they didn't even know the two bands were the same.
Oh.
They signed us. They signed that band.
That's funny.
And then they're like, "We want you to be a rap rock band, like a heavy rock." Yeah. So we want you to be like if you took the Red Hot Chili Peppers and EMF or Jesus Jones, and
which y'all were on the cutting edge of that. I mean, there were rock bands. I mean, there was Res Band, and there was I'm trying to think whoever else was, Daniel Amos and 77s, and there were some really alternative rock bands out there that were doing some really cool things, but in regular CCM format, there wasn't. That was all coming.
Yeah, it was kind of on the West Coast or stuff, like coming up.
Well, that's where everything started. All the cool stuff started on the West Coast, and a lot of the cool stuff stayed on the West Coast and never made it to Nashville, unfortunately.
Yeah, so we started making records, and then we did. Some of the guys quit. My brother quit the band. He was in the band. Our drummer was like, "I'm not into this," and it was like,
What did they all go to do? What'd your brother go do?
He was teaching school. Our drummer Ron went to work at a bank, and then it ended up just being Bob, who was like the guy that wrote this. It was like a poem and this idea to have a rap metal band. Yeah. He's like, well, he was in the Audio Adrenaline, but he wasn't really a musician, so we had to teach him how to play guitar.
Oh wow!
Or Barry did, and then our first record was super experimental and weird, and I it did okay, but it wasn't like blowing up. And then I think we were going to get dropped, and then we wrote Big House. So we started to push things back in a more of a rock class, rock vibe. Mm-hmm. So we were happy to be experimental, but we wanted to be, the core of who we were was to be rock. Yeah. So we kind of started to feel the Spin Doctors and
I can see that.
See the Chili Peppers, and you're like, okay, we could do this and do it in a way where we don't have to sacrifice the rock and roll element.
I think Third Eye Blind a little bit too.
Yeah,
and that
Third Eye
kind of
Blind. All that stuff was kind of coming around, Gin Blossoms, and then funky rock alternative. Yeah. I really liked STP. I liked Pearl Jam. Some of the guys were into Nirvana. So we started to melt all this together. Yeah. We didn't quite get there, but we at least made a decent second record, and then Big House was on it. And once Big House took off, it blew up. Yeah. So I remember, it was, we voted the song of the '90s by CC. It was crazy.
I believe it.
I
believe it.
I'd be like, Jesus Freak's pretty good. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of great songs, but I'm like, it was big. And then I don't know if you wanted me to go down this path, but
Please.
the cool thing was Eddie DeGarmo started to kind of come away from DeGarmo and Key a bit. They were kind of slowing down.
Right.
And he was moving more into the A&R position at Forefront.
Yeah, I've had Eddie on the podcast.
Oh, he's awesome.
Oh, this story of him, everything that he's done in the last 40 years is just so mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And the careers that he's been a part of.
He was a big part of us. Yeah. So what happened was he could see that these guys just need to do rock music and kind of hit their stride, being more organic, more alternative rock. And so he said, you need a new producer. So we went and we started working with John Hampton, who was Gin Blossoms. He did ZZ Top.
Yeah.
And he's a Memphis guy.
Wow.
But Eddie knew of him, and he's like, just go make a record with John. And we're like, okay. But we still didn't have a drummer.
Yeah.
Like, we were like...
Can I just ask you, though?
Yeah.
Because there's a little just industry talk here.
Yeah.
I know how much those producers cost. Mm-hmm. Like, when we went after secular producers, it went from a $30,000 budget to a $90,000 or $100,000 budget just overnight. But the quality went... Because you hire a legit producer, a legit engineer, and a legit mixer. Yeah. And now all of a sudden
you're running in the big leagues.
You're running the big leagues, and it sounds like it. Yeah. You can hear the difference from album to album. Just going, well, that's what a lot of money can get you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We didn't know that.
Oh, we didn't either.
But Eddie did. Thank God.
Not until we're like, why come we're not getting any royalty checks? Wait a minute, let's go back and go. Oh, that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we knew the budget was going to be. The budget went pretty high.
Yeah.
Like, I think it was close to $200,000.
Wow.
But that was with art and like.
Sure.
The photo shoot. But no one spends that kind of money. It's
no,
like insane.
Not anymore. Oh no. I think either the ride or the message, one of those For Him records, was around $350.
Yeah.
And then that was.
And you're like, why did we do
this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good record. Our best.
But you look back and go, "Oh, it sounds good, though."
Yeah, it still stands up.
Yeah.
So the cool thing about John was he taught us the art of minimalism, or like he's like in storytelling in the music. So in CCM at that time, we're like, all we really had was, here's what DC Talk does. Here's what the Newsboys are doing. Here's what Carmen or whatever. Yeah. So you're just kind of looking around. But we tended to fill every little inch of the song or the track with some kind of ear candy, like a sample or a whoop, gadgets and stuff. And we got to John. He's like, what is all this junk? Yeah. Just throw that out, throw this out, throw this out, throw this out.
Yeah.
And if you listen to the record he did, it's called Bloom, which has Never Gonna Be As Big as Jesus, and I'm Not the King, and Man of God. They sound incredible, but there might be a bass guitar and a drums and a vocal on the first verse.
Wow.
That's it. And then he's like, we're going to add one piece of information on the first chorus. And then we're going to add another piece of information, and you just keep building the song. And it's really just a tambourine on the two, on two. And then second verse, you tambourine on 2 and the 4. All right, so you do a little bit more, and people don't know it. Yeah. But the song's getting more interesting as you go. But he taught us how to create space, and he also said if you can't play it live, the 4 or 5 of you, at that time it was 5. He goes, we're not going to put it on the record. That's our commitment. So this is a 5-piece band, and that's what people are going to hear. And it was terrifying.
Oh, I bet.
Because you
can't hide behind anything.
You can't hide anything. And it was cool that we learned how to make a record with him, and you're in the room, and on the walls were like all these gold and platinum records from all these kind of Southern classic rock bands. It was cool. Wow. But he's passed now, but we learned a lot. It was Eddie that kind of pushed us in that direction and believed that we could go make a rock record. And that's when Audio Adrenaline kind of like hit its stride, I think. Yeah. Big House gave us the opportunity, and then Eddie directed us to make a rock album.
And then how many albums did you make after Bloom?
We did Some Kind of Zombie. which scared people to death, which I still think is a great album. Underdog, Lift, Worldwide, Until My Heart Caves In. Those were the 5 more after that.
Yeah. So how many albums in the full discography for Audio Adrenaline?
Like for what I would consider, because then Audio A came back and did a record with Kevin Max,
right,
and Adam Agee. Both of them were killer. You know, with those two, let's see, those 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe 11 full albums.
That's what For Him did. It was 11 full albums.
Yeah,
I feel like that's right around that number that most artists had staying power. Now we're going to get rid of Stephen Curtis and
the anomalies,
Michael and all the anomalies, right?
Toby.
But yeah, exactly. But that feels like, you know, for most artists in that era that had some staying power and had radio presence, 10, 11, 12 albums during that, because we were making one a year.
We were doing one. We kind of were at one every
18,
2.
Every 2, okay.
Yeah, one maybe 18.
We did one every about 18 months. Yeah. Well, sales cycle. You know, it depends on how much you're selling. Yeah. But for us, it was dependent on sales cycle for Benson.
And how many singles you had left.
Exactly. Yeah.
It was rad, dude. It was fun to be a part of. And
you had a different experience out on the road, too, than For Him did. Our audience was probably a little more subdued than yours were. You know, take me through that a little bit, what it was like on an Audio A tour and the crowds that you played for.
Insane. Yeah. Like, insane. Like we did the Free at Last tour, so it was like,
oh wow,
it was like Out of Eden, us, and DC Talk.
Gosh,
so that's
I wish I would have seen that.
93, and all of a sudden you're like, the whole arena is filled with youth groups. Yeah, it isn't like, this is not a tame, and they were all like, this is our music. Yeah, our parents won't let us listen to Aerosmith. Yeah, this is rebellious, like fired up, like crazy.
Rebellious is a really good word.
In a good way. Well,
I've got a family member who, you know, his parents wouldn't let him listen to even For Him, much less Audio A and DC Talk. And I used to slip him CDs, and he would listen to him under his bed. Yeah, you know, and that's how I always pictured your audiences, was just people that are like, I can't believe this music exists and I get to be a part of it and I can just have the best time in the world.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many people will come up to me like, man, I didn't know it existed. You know, like I became a Christian, but I was like, I was just didn't have anything to connect with anymore until I found Audio A or whoever, you know, that was coming up at the time. And there was definitely way more progressive alternative bands than us, but we were kind of like right in the thick of kind of mainstream alternative where we could connect with the normal youth group, but somebody who might, you know, like Nirvana was like, this is cool, you know. Yeah. And then they would kind of springboard off of us into the Prayer Chain or whoever else that might be really cool. Yeah. But the shows were amazing. I mean, there was, like, I don't see shows like that anymore. You know,
no, they don't exist.
Like, it's like, now you got to go to Brazil or to see that kind of, like, crowd participation. But then we did Jesus Freak tour, and that was insane. Wow.
So yeah, I always in my mind I always closely associate you guys with DC Talk.
Yeah, we
just
were
because I saw you in the same
arms.
place so many times.
We did those 2 tours, then we would start headlining after that, and we took out the Supertones and Jennifer Knapp, and that was a great tour. Then, you know, other bands, and we started going out with Mercy Me. That's when our crowds started to get a little older.
I'm about to say, yeah.
Yeah, and we kind of shifted from that rebellious youth group band to more like, this is a classic rock pop band. And we kind of embraced that. We're like, okay, you know, let somebody else be the crazy band. Yeah. But we started to write music like Ocean Floor and songs like, you know, Hands and Feet, or songs that would just, I don't know, that really felt like a deep connection to the church. And then what happened, we started to see really at our concerts, maybe 3 or 4 generations of people like grandparents that connected to our riff classic rock stuff, like Free Ride or Never Gonna Be As Big As Jesus is really an old school sounding riff. But then younger kids that were kind of, you know, more in the alternative scene were digging it too. So we kind of hit a sweet spot where we were hitting multi generations and cool. Yeah. That was cool. And radio.
Yeah. Radio was everything in the 90s. And
you
had to have radio support. Yeah. You had to have your songs on the radio, or you weren't filling up an auditorium. No, you couldn't do anything. And I still don't know why radio chose who they chose. I never understood the formula. I understand it now. I know how it works now. A lot of testing. But back then it was people. I just felt like guys like John Rivers, at the forefront would just go, I like this. Yeah. Everybody needs to hear it. And if I like it, you're going to like it. Yeah.
A lot of
Frank Reed and, guys like that understood where music was going and like, you're going to want to hear this. Yeah. Instead of going through months of listener panels and, all that kind of stuff.
Which becomes homogenized a bit, you know? Yeah. And I'm not at all jaded. I'm just like, I love both. Like, I love where we are now in Christian music, but also.
Good answer.
I really liked the 90s.
Yeah.
Because it was more risk taking.
It was a Wild West.
Yeah. You could get all kinds of stuff out.
Yeah. That's what I've talked about this before. You could listen to 90s radio and you would hear Twyla Paris.
Yeah.
And you hear Audio A. Yeah. Then you'd hear Point of Grace.
Yeah.
Then you'd hear DC Talk.
Yeah.
Then you'd hear Russ Taff. Then you'd hear For Him. And then you'd hear, Whiteheart.
Yeah.
All the mixed genres all together, but it was acceptable because it was all really good.
Yeah.
And it was all, I don't know, it's like we all played in the same sandbox for a long time.
Yeah.
And even though, like I said at the beginning of this, we didn't really hang out much together back in those days because of, your audience and our audience.
Yeah.
But there was a camaraderie, I think, in that era because, again, you could Twyla Paris, just as many people listen to Twyla as listen to Audio Adrenaline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a completely different era.
Yeah.
Like the rules were different.
Yeah.
Which I think opened it up to a lot of different.
Well, I think it mirrored pop radio as well. There were all these different genres on pop radio, and top 40 is not that way anymore. It's very specialized, and I feel like that's the way it is with Christian music now. It's very specialized to a certain lyric and audio quality.
Yeah,
what everybody's doing, and there's a few. We the Kingdom stands out to me. Yeah. Cochran and Company, I love what they're doing. There's some artists that are popping through here and there. David Leonard and Josh Baldwin, and there's some things that personally I really love. But.
Yeah, great music, great song. I think everything's getting better.
Yeah, well, it should.
That's the hope, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, I think it's getting better. I mean, I know it'd be tough for me to. I don't know if I could compete, and even at our peak, it would be different. Maybe we could. I don't know.
We'll never know, will we?
Yeah.
But that's okay. I think that's why it's fun to go back and listen to these songs again and talk about them, because it does make you go, hey, there's a different thing here that we don't need to forget about.
Yeah.
And
maybe, it was just I think it was divine. Yeah. Like God orchestrated these moments for all of us during the 90s to kind of hit. Now it's a new, I guess, orchestra that he's kind of putting together for everybody. But man, going back and listening to it is pretty fun. I'm like, oh, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
If I heard this today, I'd be like, oh, that's a good song. I like it.
Or that sounds really good. Sonically, it sounds good.
Yeah.
And did you do this? Because I did. There was a season where I really distanced myself from it, and I kind of look back on it as, that was great, but I don't know. Was it as good in my memory? Is it as good as what my memory says it was? And I threw myself into worship, as a worship pastor, and left it all behind. And I didn't really
go back and embrace it.
But I think since COVID, something happened with COVID. I think reset our brains in a way of everybody taking a breath and slowing down and not being so quick to react to some things. I mean, in some ways it's worse than it was, but I think for many of us, I know for myself, I read a lot more.
Yeah.
My pace slowed down, and that's when I feel like the music, I could take some time to reflect. And then the music came back, and I'm like, hey, you know what? It's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually that sounds really good, and I miss that. I miss, and you stop one step short, but going, let's get the band back together, let's go, because it's not going to be the same.
Did you come to your senses?
Yeah, you come to my senses, exactly. Let's talk about now. Let's jump forward again.
Yeah.
To when you knew it was time to stop and rest and with the problems you were having with your voice and what happened next. Because I know that I'm not gonna call it a fear, but it's that unknown. Yeah. It's like, what do I do now? Like what's the next step? Next? I'm not sure. Yeah. But I know deep inside God's not done with me. I know that He didn't leave me, quote an old Imperial song, He didn't leave me this far to leave us. Didn't teach us to swim to let us drown. I don't want to go too far on that, but there is that core that should be inside of us after we've seen God do all these things through us. Yeah, that is just, come on, it's okay. You're going to make it. What was that for you? Like how did you go through that?
Well, I felt like the feeling I had was almost like what you described, except I was on the other side. I was like, God is done with me. Like, I remember exactly how I felt. Okay, so I'm like, we're about to do our last tour. I can't sing anymore. I don't even want to be on the road. My marriage is done. Wife was leaving. Actually, she leaves, drives off, in a U-Haul. And I'm like, none of this meant anything. Wow. I'm like, and then I was like, I didn't think that God didn't love me anymore. I just thought He's got nothing left for me to do. There's nowhere to go. I have nothing to offer anybody. I'm a broken, busted person, and that's it. Now I'm just going to kind of fade into oblivion and, die, go to heaven someday. But the rest of my life is just going to be this existence of just not mediocrity, but obscurity. Like, and not just obscurity, just no meaning, no purpose, nothing. I was just like, wow.
And that's a hard place to go to from being one of the biggest bands on the planet in Christian music to
nothing. Zero. Yeah. And how quickly the industry too. And I mean, it's an industry.
Hey, we can talk about it. It's okay. But it's a common story. It's not something it's like, that nobody else has gone through. Everybody's gone through it in some form or fashion.
And Christian artists need to hear this. Yeah. The industry goes on without you.
That's right.
And Jesus doesn't really need you to tell the story. Someone else will tell it. Because it's a season for you. So be prepared. Like, that your importance isn't anything in you're doing. It's in Him, But anyway, so I basically I cry myself to sleep that night on a floor. Get up the next morning, and it's in the middle of winter, in between the last tour, getting ready to go out on like a January tour. Yeah. I go out to my truck, and I'm like, it's frozen on ice, and I've told this story a bunch, but I haven't told it for 4 years because I haven't really done a podcast in a long time. I go ahead and get in my truck. It's an old Bronco. It's having trouble starting, and this particular morning it's really cold. And I'm like, man, I know what's going to happen. The car's not going to start. My truck's not going to start. And that's indicative of the rest of mine. Lousy existence is just disappointment, I guess. Yeah. So I stick the key and I'm like, God, just let me know that you're here right now. That's all I really want. Start my truck. Let me know you're here. I turn the key and the truck starts, right? And then I hear me on the radio.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. Or on the speakers in my car. Yeah. And it's a song. It's not just any song. It's a song I'd written for my friend whose wife left him like 6 years ago, called Good Life, that says, basically, I don't even remember, but this is the good life. I lost everything I could ever want or ever dream of, but this is the good life because I found everything I could ever need right here in your arms. So I wrote this song. I mean, it's a heartfelt song for my buddy.
And you didn't think in a million years it would be for you.
Nope. And that the moment I asked God to show me he was there, he put it on the radio. It hadn't been on the radio for 4 or 5 years.
See, that's what's so crazy and cool about God was before you even needed that.
Yeah.
He had programmed that song.
Yeah.
Well, that's how you know God's already gone through the whole thing.
Yeah.
And set you up for
the story's already
to
written.
be there for you. Yeah.
Yeah. He's already got all the surprises, the miracles.
That just gives me chills. Wow.
And I literally thought, and it was that someone put the CD. It was like the perfect moment for me. That someone was so intentional. Like my dear friend Will, who plays bass on it, he came out in the middle of the night. This is what I thought in my head.
Yeah.
He put the CD in the CD player, queued it up for that particular lyrical moment. And I'm like, how thoughtful. And I'm like, but there's no CD in there. It was, and then I'm like, this is on the radio. Why is it on the radio?
Not even a single?
It's not even, no, it was a single. It was,
but like, and
like years ago, maybe 4 years or 5 years before.
But not a current single that you would expect them to play.
I haven't heard it on the radio for 4 years.
Wow.
Let's just say that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the cab just kind of like turns into this, I feel this warmth, and I'm like, and I heard God say, I wrote this song through you, for him, for you.
Wow.
And you don't have anything to worry about. Like, I got you. And the thought that your music didn't matter, let me just show you what it meant to people. This, how you feel right now, is how your music impacted people. Special, and not everybody, but some of the songs that we've written. This is how it felt for people to be blessed by your music. My music through you. And so all of a sudden, I just went from, I don't know, I was kind of emotionally healed in a moment. Like I had no fear of the future, because I'm like, how could I fear the future?
Yeah. It's like God just pushed your hope button.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yep. It was not only a wink from God, I feel like it was a miracle for me.
Wow.
That moved me and into the future that says it doesn't matter if I can't sing. I still got things I want to do through you. And it took a while for me to figure that out. But I started to work in Haiti, and I found my purpose. It was in the earthquake in Haiti, and using my voice to speak on CNN and all over the world for kind of to be a voice for Haiti. I was like, man, God's doing bigger things through me after music, through my voice even, than he did when I could sing.
Wow.
And that's when I go out and speak now, that's the reminder I want to tell people, is just when you think your story doesn't matter anymore, or there's nothing left to tell, that's the opportunity that God has to come in and write something even more beautiful. And that's what happened to me. And it was obviously life-changing for me, and life-giving. And now it's almost like people ask me, do you want to get your voice healed? And now I can see back through the story, and I feel like the healing was when God took my voice and he redirected my whole path towards something with a different purpose, not bigger, but just at least as significant. It's just like God's story. So, that's kind of what all happened. It was crazy. Wow. It was like so awesome that God would do that. So
thanks for sharing that with me.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible. So what are you doing now? Tell me what life is like for Mark Stuart right now.
Well, I do a lot of stuff. I'm a dad, which takes up a ton of emotional bandwidth, and I'm old. My kids are 17 and I'm 56, so it's hard to keep up.
Don't talk to me about old, brother.
Like, come on,
younger than I am.
You're out there, trying to stay relevant. What does that word mean? I don't know.
If you find out, let me know, please.
Yeah, I'm like, look it up now. I love Christian music, and I'm managing a couple of artists, but I'm like thinking about getting into management more, like and helping people the way Eddie DeGarmo kind of helped us. That's one of my aspirational goals. I'm not sure if that's yet, but I manage Anthem Lights and Caleb and Kelsey.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so I work with those two artists. I can kind of help steward their career. I have a music licensing company that over the past few years I've been developing with a couple buddies, and that's just launched. I'm also highly involved in Hands and Feet Project, which is kind of like founded with Will and the guys in Audio Adrenaline, which is a ministry in Haiti. So that takes up a lot of my time. And then I also speak and have a real passion, adopted, two beautiful kids from Haiti, Crystal and Journey. And to be a part of their journey, their story, and to see how God works in their life. I get to tell their story, kind of from the parental framework in that context to help get kids sponsored. So I represent different orgs that I really love on doing family preservation. So that's what I do.
And
Keeps me busy.
Is there like a website people can go to
handsandfeetproject.org is the one I'd probably point you to. That's specifically focused on Haiti. And if you can, go check that out, dig in, sponsor a kid, make a donation would be awesome. Just learn more about it and pray for what we're doing. Haiti's in a tough spot because of political unrest and just gang violence right now. So, what we want to do in Haiti has been dramatically slowed down just because of where they are. But, we still, believe and hope that God's got big things for the country of Haiti and some healing, and we want to be a part of that. So handsandfeetproject.org, based on that old song of ours.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny how the music kind of takes its own life,
it's like you couldn't have figured out God's plans if he dropped you clues along the way, and
Air Force Academy.
You have no idea. And that's, again, you get old like us, or older like us, I should say, and you kind of stop. It's not that you stop dreaming, but you stop being surprised about, like, wow, God, you're going to do something else, and I'm just waiting for the next thing that you're going to do.
That's the verse that I've learned. There's a Bible verse, John 10:10. The thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But I've come to give you life and life more abundant. The abundant life to me is a life full of surprises. It's a life of the overflow. Where I didn't expect that, or that's more than I expected, or good and bad. And when you sign up with Jesus, get ready for a life of the overflow, and it's going to be more than you ever dreamed.